I'm going to begin by asking that you please look up all of these terms, many of them things like infection and disease away from the normal. Pathogenicity and virulence is the infectivity level. Normal flora is like E. coli in your GI tract. So many of these you already know, but I use some of these terms intermittently throughout the unit, so I want to make sure that you have a decent understanding of all of them. So this particular unit, we're going to talk about how different types of pathogens cause disease, and then the second half of the unit is the immune system. So those of you that have had A and P will love the second half of this unit because some of it will be a large amount of review. So when we talk about how pathogens cause disease, please remember that we have bacteria, fungi, protozoa, helminth, as well as viruses, but because this is microbiology, the large focus, probably 90% of what we're going to discuss is in fact going to be bacteria. I promise it's not a misprint that you see 2 number 3s, but I'd like to go through all of these different boxes, and then you will see when we go through the PowerPoints in Unit 3 that it's all written out for you pretty well. So how things such as pathogens cause disease, the first thing we're going to look at is portals of entry. So how does that pathogen get into the human body? Often it's a mucous membrane, or with respiratory, think about COVID that's going on, or bacterial, there's skin. If you break the skin after someone has surgery, one of the biggest fears, some people when I ask in class will say, oh, dying from anesthesia, but really the biggest fear is post-surgical because you've cut the largest organ and you've opened up the skin, allowing for infection to take root. So the last one listed here, parenteral root, people see the word parent and they think that it is from mother to child, but in fact it's not. It's basically through a medical device, so a catheter or a portal, someone having an IV, things of that nature. So make sure you look at parenteral root if you're not familiar with it. So the second thing we have to look at is the number of invading microbes. A bacterial example for you is if you are having a picnic and it's a little bit warmer out and there's egg salad, potato salad, coleslaw, it's always going to have a certain amount of bacteria numbers in it. If the numbers are too high, that's when someone will get sick from it. But otherwise, the number of invading microbes will always determine if there's a pathogenic effect or not. Adherence, how does it actually stick to or adhere to its host? Then for number 3, we're going to look at penetration or evasion of host defenses. So how does that pathogen break down the immune system or other host defenses of its host when it's invading? Then the damage to the host cell is kind of tied together with evasion of the host defenses, which is why both of these are numbered as number 3. Underneath here, you see the term colonization. Bacteria do in fact colonize, and we'll talk about that more later. And the final step is portal of exit. So often the portal of exit as well as entry is one and the same. So here I have these things written out for you that we just discussed. A couple other things I'll mention is we're going to talk a lot about ID50 and what is that. And we're basically going to talk about some specifics for all of the things discussed in the boxes above, such as entrance, adherence, colonization, how invading of the host occurs, and then below are some examples of that. I am going to bring up the inflammatory response and some of the things related to that, and finally portal of exit. So we will need to cover this for all 5 types of microbes, but as I mentioned, more than 90% is going to be based fully on bacteria. So we're going to cover how viruses cause disease, again, fungi, protozoa, and helminth, and you will see that this is all written out for you. I believe it's 1 slide per microbe on the actual PowerPoint, but again, the big focus is 100% going to be bacteria. Okay, then the second half of this unit is going to be the immune system. So there is innate, which is also non-specific. We'll talk about physical, chemical, and other type of factors, normal flora, the different non-specific responses. Then we will move over to the specific resistance, also known as adaptive immunity. This is where your information with both parts of the immune system really will relate well to those of you that have had this already in A and P. So we're going to talk about T cells and B cells. So the cell-mediated, which is T cells, and humoral or antibody-mediated, which is B cells. And then we'll talk about differences in shutting down viral versus bacterial infections. Next, we'll have a short little stint on immune disorders. There are 4 different types. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about autoimmune disorders. And that's pretty much going to wrap up Unit 3. Again, at the end, just like with all the other units, you have those statements or questions which you can complete for the 5 points extra credit. The due dates are all seen in Canvas, and it must be turned in before you enter to take the exam.